had to deal with minimal fractions. There was no leading coefficient to contend with. You have to get to the point where you're comfortable automatically with those. So yes, I gave you x squared plus 5x minus 6 equals 0. Is this something that is easily factorable? Yes, absolutely. You get x plus 6 times x minus 1 equals 0. X equals negative 6 and 1, right? There's 2 points for you. Okay, so completing the square, you have to be able to do this. You have to. Can't be clearer about that. So you move that 6 over to the other side, and after you move the 6 over, what do you have to add to both sides? Half of 5 squared. There's no x to add. You're adding this to both sides. Half of the b squared, half of it squared. Why do you do that? Because when you do that, what happens to this? What does this turn into? It turns into what? X plus 5 over 2 squared. And on the other side, it's 6 plus 25 over 4. How many fourths are there in 6? There's 24 of them. 25. What's 24 plus 25?
49.
No. 49.
Where did the 5x go?
Didn't go anywhere. This is the same as that. It is the factored form of that. If you multiply out x plus 5 halves times x plus 5 halves, you get x squared plus 5x plus 5 over 2 squared. They are the same thing. Now what do you do to both sides? You now have this is equal to that. What do you do to both sides?
Square.
Yes. So you end up with x plus 5 over 2 is equal to what?
Square root of 49.
That's half of it.
7 over 2.
That's half of it. When you take a square root, yep, they did that, but what do you also, when you take a square root, there are 2 answers.
Plus or minus.
Yes, plus or minus the square root of 49 over 4, which is plus or minus 7 over, yes. So you now have x equals, so you get x plus, I'll do it out each step. You have x plus 5 halves is equal to plus or minus 7 over 2. Are you done? No. So you have x is equal to negative 5 over 2 plus or minus 7 over 2. How many answers is that? How many answers is that? 2. So you have negative 5 over 2 plus 7 over 2, and you have negative 5 over 2 minus 7 over 2. What's negative 5 plus 7? 2 over 2, which is 1. And what's negative 5 minus 7? 12 over 2 is negative 6. Do you have the same answers? You do. Are you good with the quadratic equation? The quadratic formula, I mean?
Yeah.
Quadratic formula? Yeah, you should be automatic. You should know it's x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over what? 2a. And what's the thing that you find first? Yeah, what's that called?
Discriminant.
Discriminant. And it's really helpful because you can find out things about the solutions. If that's a real number, you have 2 real answers. If that's equal to 0, how many answers do you have if the discriminant is 0?
No.
1, yeah, because it's plus or minus 0, exactly. And what happens if it's negative? You have 2 imaginary answers. 2 imaginary, because you'd have a negative square root imaginary. Okay, so what we need to do now is we're going to put this one, I'll tell you, the hint is this is a quadratic. It doesn't look like one now, but as you start working on this, it will be a quadratic. And then once you get it into a nice format, you're going to need to use one of the solution methods to solve. So try that. See if you can figure it out. See if you can figure it out. Bless you. No calculator. To add or subtract fractions, what do you need to have? Or just eliminate all the denominators, yes. Right. Okay, you can chat with somebody else to see if you can get any further. Remember, don't multiply out denominators unless you have to. Yep. Yeah, correct. If I don't tell you the method. No, we're not going to do every method on this one. It's a waste of time. I'm going to show you the easiest thing to do, but I'm not going to do all of them. It is possible to factor this one nicely. It's possible. Can you do that with the 12?
The only other thing you do is subtract 7 from that side and make it equal yeah, I got so I just flipped everything to get everything the math is right.
Okay, what do you do first if you want to simplify this? Tell me a good first step. Who thinks they have a great first step? That's a noun. I need a verb.
make a common denominator.
Give me a specific step. What should I do first?
Multiply.
That's a verb. Can I get a sentence?
Multiply 1 over x by x minus 1 and 1 over x minus 1 by x.
You have to multiply by a form of 1.
Over x. X minus, never mind.
Multiply the first one, x minus 1 over x minus 1, and then the next one, x over x.
Sounds great. I love that. Thank you for being specific. Excellent. So what do we do next?
Can't you get rid of the denominators?
No, you can't. What'd you say? Yeah, so you have x minus 1 plus x over x times x minus 1. Okay, that's one thing you can do. Now what?
2x minus 1.
Yeah, so you have 2x minus 1 over x times x minus 1 equals 7 over 12. Yeah, so you want to multiply out the bottom? Sure.
You're not allowed to get rid of the x minus 1s.
No, how could you do that? The whole point is to have a common denominator. If you get rid of them, you've eliminated the whole point of this multiplication. The whole point, you're going to, yes, Nate. The whole point of that operation is to get a common denominator. So we need a common denominator so that we can do that. So now we're here, yes. Now what do we do? Yeah, so you end up with 7x squared minus 7x is equal to what? 24x minus 12? Is that a quadratic?
You subtract 24x.
Hold on. It is a quadratic. Is it in standard form? No. Is it a quadratic? Yes, it is a quadratic, but it's not in standard form. So what do we need to do to put it in standard form? Yeah, so you end up with 7x squared minus 31x plus 12 equals 0. And you look at this, and what was the first method you should try? What? You can be more confident than that. You are correct. You should try to factor. And here's the thing. I will tell you that this is nicely factorable. That being said, are these nice numbers to work with? I mean, it's not nice because you don't like seeing that 7, but here's the thing. How many ways can you factor 7? There's only one. So there's only one thing to test, really, right? So for this one, it's going to be 7x and x, right? And then you know the other two numbers have to multiply together to get what? 12. Unfortunately, there are a bunch of things that multiply together to get 12, so you could start testing if you wanted to. You could start testing. It's negative 31, and it's positive 12, so we know both of these have to be negative. Anybody want to guess? I think it's like negative. Let's try
4 and 3.
negative 4, negative
28 plus 3 is...
He's got it. So if we do this right here, what's 7x times x? Negative what? 21x minus 4x plus 12. Is that close? Is that correct? Because this right here is negative 25. Is that right? No, but it looks close. So what could we switch? Yeah, you could change this to negative 3 and negative 4. So what do you end up with? You end up with, let's try it out, 7x squared minus 28x minus 3x plus 12. Hey, does that work? It does. Yay, it does. So this equals 0. So by the zero product property, if two things multiply together to get 0, at least one of them has to equal 0. Yes, has to equal 0. So based on this statement right here, what two things do we know could be true?
X could equal 4.
Well, but go back. You know, two things are multiplied together to get 0, so one or the other has to be 0. So what are the two statements that you get from this? What are the two things that are multiplied together?
X equals 3 over 7.
Hold on, go back. That's correct. That is correct. But you have two things that are multiplied together to get 0. What are the two things?
7x minus 3.
So 7x minus 3 equals 0, or that's what I wanted you to say. So yes, now you know x equals 4. What you were saying was correct. I just want you to be careful with it. So x is equal to? So there are two answers to this, absolutely. Now theoretically, if you have time, what should you do? Check your answer. You don't need to check right now. This is correct. You're fine. The point is, you had to do a little bit of work in order to get to this. I didn't start you off with it in standard form. You had to do some work beforehand. You had to do some work beforehand. So you had to build.
X plus 2 over x plus 2.
So still not the correct sentence. Try again. The top. You're only multiplying the top.
First fraction.
Ah, the first fraction. So you're multiplying the first fraction by what?
X plus 2 over x plus 2.
Yep, that's one thing you could do. Absolutely.
Second one.
And by what?
By x plus 1
Over what? X plus 1? Excellent. So you end up with 2 times x plus 2 plus 3 times x plus 1. And what's the common denominator? x plus 2, and that equals what? So at this point you could what? You could simplify the top, sure. Sure, we can do that. So what's it going to be? I don't know why this is not going away. There we go. So you end up with, well, let's just 2x plus 4 plus 3x plus 3 all over the same thing, right? So you end up with what? 5x plus 7 over x plus 1 times x. Do you want to multiply out the bottom? Yeah, we might as well. X squared plus what? X plus 2x plus 2. So what do you get? X squared plus 3x plus 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
So at this point, what do you need to do? Cross multiply, yep. So you end up with 10x plus 14 is equal to 7x squared plus 21x plus 14.
Yeah.
Is that a quadratic? Yes. Is it in standard form? No. So let's make it 0. So 0 is equal to 7x squared. How many x's? What? Yeah, 11x. Is that correct? And then what happens to the 14s? They cancel. So you have 7x squared plus 11x. Cool. How do you solve this? What's the first method you should try? Factor. What can you factor out? X times 7x plus 11. So there are two answers. X is equal to 0 or 7x plus 11 is equal to 0. So 7x is equal to negative 11. So x is equal to negative 11 over 7. So there are two answers. 0 or negative 11 over 7. Again, you get to a quadratic that's fully simplified. What method should you always try first, at least consider? Factoring. If you factor this one, is it really straightforward? So yeah, what you asked before is, I was wrong. I thought maybe it did have a C, but did you get this?
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have both answers?
I kind of stopped because I didn't.
The square root of these?
2 or 3?
No.
Oh.
X equals,
Forgot that.
x equals, when you take a square root, we just did this today, plus or minus 3.
Plus or minus 2.
How many answers are there?
2.
No.
Or, 4. 4.
Homework's in your assignment.